Naxxramas and the gear has received a lot of changes and updates, all for the better. So in this video, we're going to cover all of that and how you can be the most prepared going into Phase 7's raid in Season of Discovery. So for starters, let's talk about the new gearing system for Phase 7. Similar to that of the time-worn gear we got from the last phase, just significantly stronger though, we're getting Sanctified Gear for Naxxramas. Any gear with the Sanctified label will buff you with the new player power progression buff in Naxxramas, the Seal of the Dawn. For every piece of Sanctified gear you equip, up to 8 slots maximum, you will be buffed an X amount of percentage and health, and then depending on the role you pick, you will also get some other stat buffs like healing, shielding, or threat if you're a tank. The buff can be leveled up a total of 10 times, going from its rank 1 variant here to its rank 10 variant here. This has gone through a lot of changes. Originally, this was capped at 12 and the buff was a trinket. These were changed per player feedback, myself included, to allow us to still have some freedom of gearing and not locking a trinket slot. Because beforehand, all 12 slots of your gear were sanctified. Everything you wore was sanctified. So all the old gear you got from previous phases was just obsolete. You wouldn't need it. You would need to get sanctified gear. And that's just not a lot of fun, especially in the classic setting. And having a trinket slot just be taken up forever, again, it's just not in the classic setting. So I'm thankful they listened to our feedback and made these changes. So now where do we get this sanctified gear? All of the gear in Naxxramas, including your tier, will have the sanctified label on it, different from that of the time-worn gear in AQ, where your tier did not have that label on it. However, and this is big, you can also get sanctified gear outside of the raid from the new Scourge Invasion event, the new Karazhan Crypts dungeon, and the new EPL quests. These quests were originally only available when Naxx came out, but Blizzard is going to make them available as soon as Phase 7 drops with the Karazhan Crypts and Scourge Invasion. All specs and roles should be able to get all 8 sanctified slots before even entering the raid at launch. I'm going to use my class/spec as an example here. A prop paladin's pre-Naxx BiS would look something like this here. The neck and one of the rings coming from Kara, the other ring coming from a repeatable quest in Eastern Plaguelands, and the 3 set from the Scourge Invasions. However, this would only be pre-Naxx BiS for my class at least if we can get the rank 2 buff week 1 of Naxx. Now, if you're good at math, you probably only counted 6 items and you'd be correct. However, the 3 set has a bonus that adds +2 sank to your character, which totals an 8. So let's talk about these 3 sets now. There are versions for all specs and roles for all armor types coming to SoD, different from that of Original Classic. And since there's a much larger amount of these items, I'm going to assume and hope that these are not only achieved the same way they were in Original Classic, where they only dropped off the rare spawns of the Scourge Invasion, but rather that there's some sort of currency vendor or some easier way somehow, some way to allow us to attain these pieces a little easier. I'll put a link to all the sanctified items in the description below so you know which ones you might want to farm before entering Naxxramas. Now let's go back to the Seal of the Dawn buff. I mentioned earlier that this can be leveled up. To level up your current buff, you need to turn in an X amount of a new currency called Remnants of Valor. This currency currently drops off bosses in Naxx, and more will drop per boss if you do the harder difficulties. You can also get these remnants from the Scourge Invasions and I believe the new Kara dungeon. And I know at first it was mentioned that the Scourge Invasion will have a weekly cap of how many remnants you can get, but I think that might have been scrapped. I'm not too sure, to be honest. We also currently don't know how many remnants it will cost to level up, just that it will cost more and more for each rank. The remnants will also be account bound, so let's say my prop paladin hits max rank, I can start sending them to my prop warrior if he needs to level up his rank as well. You can also apparently farm as many as you want, but leveling the trinket will be time gated week by week. Currently, we have a number for the first upgrade from rank 1 to 2 being 150 remnants, but we believe that may just be a placeholder since the cap on the remnants is at 30, but the cap itself might also just be a placeholder. You may worry that, well, even though my alt can still get rank 10, the sanctified gear he's wearing surely wouldn't be strong enough to enter those harder levels of Naxxramas. And again, at least for my class and spec, that's not the case. As you can see here, when I upgrade the rank with this pre-Naxx BiS list, it puts me still at a respectable amount of health, damage, and threat to still do those higher levels. However, it probably will be easier for DPS than tanks, and I'll get to that in this next section. So let's move on now to Naxx itself. Naxx had its original 10 difficulty levels dropped to just 5 now, and here's how that works. Each wing will have its own unique affix when you activate its hard mode pylon at the main hub of the raid, which is now filled, by the way, with Argent Dawn and Scarlet Crusade members, so I'm excited to see what that's about. Clicking on a wing's pylon will not only activate the wing's affix, but buff the entire raid's damage and health. So activating one pillar will put you on the second hardest difficulty, 2 would be the third, 3 would be the fourth, and all 4 would be the fifth and hardest difficulty. Also, the only way to unlock Kel'Thuzad and Sapphiron's supposed new encounters will be by only completing everything at its hardest difficulty, meaning we won't see that for a while since the rank buffs are time gated. You can see here what each wing's affix is, but along with this raid buff, we're also going to get a Sunwall Plateau-esque tank debuff, reducing our dodge and increasing our chance to get hit, scaling with each difficulty level added. It really seems like Blizzard wants to make these higher difficulties actually hard, maybe. There will be another PTR this week to allow us to test the proper military wing going for SoD, as the last PTR had the incorrect one. This new one should have adjusted encounters for Vesuvius and the 4 horsemen, not make it so comp locked, which was a main complaint I had, because in SoD, it's going to be hard to have 2 competent priests, Vesuvius, and 3 to 4 tanks for the 4 horsemen. And we'll also get to test our new tier 3 set. Maybe we'll also get a true sense of how hard things will hit in this PTR. The last PTR did show some challenge, but guilds were still able to clear some wings on higher difficulties, from 3 even to 5, which seems to really defeat the purpose of this new system we're getting. I don't really want to enter a raid if everyone can be a DPS and you don't need healers. That might be cool for some people, but again, it just doesn't fit the classic feeling, if that makes sense. And also, it really does make my job with Wowhead a lot harder with all these changes, as I think I'm on about variation 5 now of Abyss list or protection paladins, with this current one just changing everything today. So yeah. And the last thing I want to cover with Naxx and your Seal of the Dawn buff is that based on the difficulty you do, your buff is capped to a certain rank. So for example, if you wanted to clear all of level 0 with a rank 10 raid, that wouldn't happen. They're not going to let you do that. The main reason being, if a boss dies like in a literal second or 5 seconds, he might not spawn loot, so they don't want that issue happening. And lastly, this is old news, but don't forget we're also getting a new shoulder enchant slot for previous set bonuses all the way back to Molten Core. It's still unknown as I'm making this video how to get those set bonuses, but I'm sure we'll find out when Phase 7 launches. And now, just being honest, this system is a lot, and it's honestly like too much. I'm not a big fan of it because it's definitely too retail-y, like I said earlier, and in my opinion, it doesn't fit or belong in the classic setting. However, I am very appreciative of the devs for listening to our feedback. I know me personally, I reached out and talked about asking to reduce the sank cap from 12 to 8. I'm not saying I'm the reason why they did it, but I'm happy that what I wanted came to life. And I'm not saying retail is bad. I'm a cutting edge raider myself. I've gotten Keystone Master throughout all of Shadowlands. I just really prefer the classic playstyle and gearing system versus retail. I also appreciate the devs for trying something new and different for SoD, as this is an experimental version of the game, but they just really missed the mark with this one, in my opinion. I still think this raid can be really fun if they tune Naxx appropriately and the raid launches with minimal bugs and it's just an overall fun raid to clear. If they do all this, then I think the gearing system will just be an afterthought. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and your feedback about everything is genuinely appreciative, as the devs do watch my videos. However, if you're just going to be rude or obnoxious, I will just delete your comment, as I always do. You can always be respectful when giving criticism, and again, I'm not saying I'm the reason that it went from 12 to 8 for the Sank gear, but I did have a conversation with Agron about that. So remember, things can change if you're not a jerk about it. And I apologize again for the lack of content. It just came at the worst time with my job as a band director and all the changes happening with Wowhead, trying to get a proper BiS list out for prop paladins. And I apologize if this video is super rushed and very scripted. I just wanted to get this out to y'all because it is a lot of stuff to have to comprehend. So I just want to make sure that all you SoD enjoyers still can be the most prepared for Naxxramas and really understand everything going on in Phase 7. As always, thanks for stopping by. Thanks for saying hi. I'll see y'all in the Karazhan Crypts, out in the Scourge invasions, and then eventually in Naxxramas.